Hello and welcome. My name is Tim McCracken from Crypto Academy World. In today's workshop, we're going to be looking at Mark Moss. He's going to present some absolutely awesome concepts about where Bitcoin's going in 2025. He's an outstanding presenter. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right, so let's jump right into this. I'm going to use my whiteboard here on my computer to try to map all this out for you, draw it out for you. Okay, so at the center of all this, we have one man working inside the government, and that is Howard Lutnick. Now, most people don't know who he is, but if you do know, you probably know he's the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. It's an old school Wall Street institution. But what they don't know is that he's also the current U.S. Commerce Secretary, meaning he's not just playing the game. He's not just in Wall Street trying to play along. He's actually in the U.S. government writing the rules. So that's Howard Lutnick. Now, his company is Cantor Fitzgerald. So let's bring this over. As I said, this is an old school Wall Street firm. And Cantor Fitzgerald quietly announced a new Bitcoin financing business. So what they want to do is they want to provide financing or liquidity in the Bitcoin space, specifically for borrowing against your Bitcoin. So they have a $2 billion fund that they've set up to finance people that want to borrow against their Bitcoin, which is great because, as I always say all the time, don't sell your Bitcoin, borrow against it. And that's exactly what they're doing. They've announced they have $2 billion of liquidity for Bitcoin. And let's go ahead and bring Bitcoin over. So we have this on our game board as well. So here we have Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, bringing in $2 billion of new liquidity entering the system without triggering any supply demand metrics. And then we have Bitcoin right here. So we're starting to see how this is shaping up. Now, as I said, Lutnick is in the government. Now, before he was just part of Wall Street, but now he's part of Wall Street and he's in the government and he's writing the policy in order to do this. It's a book right out of Wall Street's financial engineering playbook. By the way, Bitcoin in 2025 is coming up in Las Vegas here. I'm going to be there speaking. Come hang out. I'll put a link down below if you want to save some money on tickets and come hang out with me. You never know who's going to be there. Well, I'll be there. Okay, so now here's where it starts getting interesting. Now, Cantor Fitzgerald is an old school Wall Street investment firm. They've invested into many things, like, for example, over here, a very controversial company you might have heard quite a bit about, Tether. Now, Tether is a US dollar stablecoin. It's the oldest US dollar stablecoin, and it's been rumored for years and years and years and years and years to be behind Bitcoin pumping and all of that. I've never believed in any of that. That's a whole other subject. We're going to make a video about that. Let me know in the comments down below. But Tether is the largest US dollar stablecoin company, and they hold over 83,000 Bitcoin. Now, who owns a big piece of them? Well, that would be, of course, Cantor Fitzgerald. Here we have over here, Cantor Fitzgerald owning about 5% of Tether. So Lutnick owns Cantor Fitzgerald, the CEO. They have now launched Bitcoin products, and they also own 5% of Tether over here. Okay, so we're starting to see how this whole thing shapes out. Now, why would this legacy Wall Street firm buy into the biggest stablecoin printer in the entire world? Well, probably because they know exactly where it's headed. All right, now another big investment that Cantor Fitzgerald has made is in this company, Strategy. You might have heard of them, formerly MicroStrategy. They've gone ahead and changed their name because they're all in Bitcoin now. Now, at this point, we know that Cantor Fitzgerald took a massive investment in the Strategy. We don't know exactly how much ownership, about $1 billion just in Q4 of 2024, so very recent. So if you think Strategy is not a good play, well, you might want to go talk to Lutnick because he just put $1 billion in last quarter. He obviously understands something about Strategy that we don't. So now we have Lutnick inside the US government, CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, making massive investments, $1 billion investment in Strategy, $600 million investment in Tether, because they know exactly what's going on. But here's where things even get more shocking. As Commerce Secretary, Lutnick is working with the Treasury and the White House economic advisors to build not one, but two government-level Bitcoin programs. First of all, they are building a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, of which potentially Lutnick will be in charge of. So Lutnick now will be directing the U.S. government to be investing money as part of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund. Now, what do you think that Lutnick might advise the U.S. sovereign wealth fund to buy? Well, if you're looking at this web, you might think Bitcoin, and you'd probably be right. The other plan that the government is putting together is a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. And of course, what would they be buying specifically? Well, it says it right in the name. That would be Bitcoin. Well, so now we have Lutnick, CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, making billion-dollar investments into Strategy and into Tether, and as well as creating a $2 billion product around Bitcoin. At the same time, working inside the government to get the government to buy Bitcoin for both the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund and a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, what would the goal of all this be? Well, of course, if you can get the government to make it budget neutral, meaning that they don't spend any more money from taxes, then the direct cost to the public is none. But let's be real here. That's government code for financial engineering. But what do we really get here? Well, we get a man with power in both government and finance. We get a $1 trillion firm issuing Bitcoin-backed leverage. We get two of the biggest whales in crypto standing behind it. And we have a government quietly positioning itself to become Bitcoin's biggest holder. Now, look, this isn't some dream. This isn't some fragmented movement. This is a Bitcoin flywheel machine, a feedback loop machine, if you will. So how does this machine actually work, besides obviously putting all these pieces together? Well, what happens is, number one, is we get a capital injection into Cantor's play. So by Cantor Fitzgerald working with Wall Street and allowing Wall Street to bring that liquidity into the market without having to sell their Bitcoin, we have all this new capital entering the market. Now, all that new capital entering the market boosts their buying power without increasing the supply. If we can do that without increasing the supply, that pushes the price up. That puts upward pressure on the price. That's just the beginning. Step number two is then the market activity starts to surge. So all that fresh leverage, all that demand starts flooding in. Now we have traders, we have funds, we have whales starting to use borrowed capital to accumulate even more Bitcoin. Because of course, they're all expecting the price to rise. Now this increased buying activity pushes prices higher, just like we saw during previous bull runs, except for this time, liquidity is coordinated. Okay, the third part, step three, is we have major stakeholders starting to profit. And so as Bitcoin starts going up, we have companies here like Strategy holding 500,000 Bitcoin now. We have companies like Tether owning 84,000 Bitcoin, seeing the value of their holdings explode. Imagine as Bitcoin goes from 120, 150, 200, MicroStrategy or now Strategy owns 5,000. Now remember, as the value of their holdings goes up, so does their equity. Cantor Fitzgerald owns both. They own Bitcoin and they own the company's equity. And so as the company's equity and their valuation goes up, then Cantor Fitzgerald gets, shall we say, a double dip. Now, step number four is institutional endorsement. So here's where it starts getting really interesting. You see, when the government, through the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund and the U.S. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, as the government adoption enters the cycle through two potential moves, through this budget neutral strategy, meaning that there's reallocating money. Well, what it does is it creates this massive buy side demand. More importantly, what it does is it signals Bitcoin is now a strategic national asset. What does that mean? Well, basically, when the U.S. signals full institutional backing of Bitcoin, it's not just the whales piling in anymore. Now it's pensions, it's endowments, it's corporations, it's other nations. And that leads us to step number five, which of course is institutional FOMO. So we have now Wall Street. Let's just bring them in here. Let's put them at the middle. Now we have institutional FOMO. Now we have created a system that allows them to be okay putting money in with the government backing of this. They start piling in, which then continues to feed the flywheel. They buy more, they tap into Fitzgerald's debt. They get the debt, they bring more liquidity to the market. The buying pushes the price up without bringing new supply to market, which then brings the valuation of Bitcoin up. Then companies like MicroStrategy, Strategy, Tether see the valuation of their holdings go up as well as their stock go up at the same time. And we have a perfect flywheel. The momentum attracts capital. Capital means more demand means more leverage equals higher prices, then the cycle spins again. This is the flywheel going round and round and round. And the faster it spins, the faster it goes up. Now, this isn't a hype cycle, right? This is a coordinated system of leverage. Coordinated system of leverage, legitimacy, and liquidity. That's why I'm calling this a Bitcoin flywheel machine. and it's already in motion. Now, let's talk about what this means for you. Because if you're holding Bitcoin or you're thinking about buying Bitcoin, this changes everything, right? This isn't retail FOMO. This isn't another hype wave. This is state level game theory. This is financial infrastructure being built under your feet. Now, when governments and private sectors start to coordinate like this, they're not speculating, okay? That's what you and I did in the first phase. What they're doing is positioning. Now, this is why I always show you this chart, pull it up here, of the 50-year cycle. So this 50-year cycle I reference all the time is our blueprint of understanding this. So in this 50-year, what I call quantum wave investment cycle, we have 4 distinct phases. We can see in phase number 1, which we've been in, this first 10 years is what we call the eruption phase. And this is where retail money rushes in. This would be from 2010 to 2020. Then from 2020, 2030, we have what's called the frenzy phase. Now you can see from this green arrow, this is where we're at right here. It's important to understand this. Now, the reason why it's important to understand this is because these 4 distinct phases give us this blueprint, this roadmap of where we're at. If we look at it from another way, we can see this first part right here, again, was the retail eruption phase. So this is where you and I bought a bunch. We got to front run the governments. We saw the altcoin explosion. But right now, from 2020 to 2030, right in this big part of the move here is the institutional frenzy phase. This is where institutions, where the Wall Street institutions, where the governments, the sovereigns start to frenzy in. This is where the big money is made. And if you understand the playbook, you know how to invest through it. Now, this kind of coordinated leverage and demand, it doesn't lead to 20% gains. It leads to multiple. It leads to a full-blown Bitcoin supply shock in the middle of an adoption wave with government signaling right behind. Now, that's when you stop measuring growth in percentages. You start thinking about it in exponentials. It also means you have to stop investing in the rear view mirror. That means you have to stop thinking about the past. You have to stop thinking about how expensive things are based off of the past. So, yeah, but Bitcoin used to be 10 cents and $10 and $100 and $1,000. And yeah, it's in the past. What we want to be doing is investing in the windshield. We want to be thinking about the future, thinking about things where things are going. And by understanding the cycles, you can follow the exact same playbook. Now, if you want to see me break down the entire playbook and show you where I think Bitcoin is in 2030, 2040, and 2050, and give you all the math to back it up, then you might want to go watch this video right here. But here's the thing. Either way, I hope you realize what's happening here. Howard Lutnick's plan isn't some fantasy. It's real. It's unfolding right now. And it could mark the beginning of the next generational wealth transfer for those that are paying attention. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thumbs up if you like it. Otherwise, that's what I got. Here's success.
As you can tell.